1500, Spain controlled the world's largest silver mines, Potosi in Bolivia, Zacatecas in Mexico. Between 1500 and 1650, Spanish galleons transported approximately 150,000 tons of silver across the Atlantic. That's roughly 40% of global production for 3 centuries. Spain held more silver than any empire in history, but somehow Spanish workers got poorer, not slower growth, not stagnation, poorer. How? Real wages in Spain declined approximately 30% between 1520 and 1600. By 1600, Spanish laborers could afford less food, less clothing, and less shelter than their grandparents in 1500, despite living in the wealthiest empire on earth. Spain declared bankruptcy multiple times: 1557, 1575, 1596, 1607, 1627, 1647. The empire with infinite silver couldn't pay its debts. Not paradox, physics. When Spanish galleons unloaded silver in Seville, the crown, church officials, and court-connected merchants received it first. They spent immediately, at existing prices. The crown purchased weapons, ships, and soldiers for European wars. Court merchants bought Flemish tapestries, Italian silk, and German steel. Church officials commissioned cathedrals. All transactions occurred before prices adjusted to the new silver supply. First, receivers captured full purchasing power. Then the silver moved outward. Government contractors received payment, they hired more workers, regional merchants restocked inventory, prices began to rise, slowly at first, then faster. Bread, wool, rent. By the time silver reached rural laborers, the farmers, shepherds, and miners who produced Spain's actual wealth, prices had already increased. Wages adjusted eventually, but wages always adjust after prices. Between 1500 and 1600, Spanish prices increased 500%. Nominal wages increased 200%. The difference? Transferred. Spain's population collapsed. Between 1600 and 1650, Castile lost 21% of its population. Workers emigrated and birth rates fell. Economic dysfunction compounded. The silver remained, but its purchasing power vanished. Same mechanism, different velocity. In 1716, France was bankrupt. Decades of war under Louis XIV had drained the treasury. The French government owed around 3 billion livres, roughly twice the annual tax revenue. John Law proposed a solution: create paper money. Law, a Scottish economist and convicted murderer, he fled Britain after killing a man in a duel. He convinced the French regent to charter the Banque Générale in 1716. The bank issued paper notes backed by government debt, not gold, not silver, but promises. Then Law launched the Mississippi Company. The company claimed exclusive trading rights to French Louisiana, an undeveloped territory rumored to contain infinite gold. The bank printed new money. Investors used the new money to purchase Mississippi Company shares. Share prices increased. The bank printed more money. Share prices increased further. France's money supply increased 4,400% between 1716 and 1720. Investors who bought early, courtiers, financiers, and those with access to the bank made fortunes. Mississippi Company shares rose from 500 livres to 10,000 livres, 1,900% gain in 18 months. But French workers didn't own shares. They received wages in paper livres. By 1720, bread prices in Paris had increased 220%. Nominal wages had increased approximately 40%. The same transfer, but faster. By November 1720, the scheme collapsed. Mississippi Company shares fell 95%. Law fled France. The currency stabilized, but only after purchasing power had transferred from workers to early investors. This mechanism completed in 4 years, not 150, even faster than Spain. World War I. In August 1914, Britain abandoned the gold standard to finance the war. The Bank of England printed currency to purchase government bonds. Between 1914 and 1920, Britain's money supply increased 110%. Banks, munitions manufacturers, and government contractors received payment first. Sounds familiar? They purchased factories, equipment, and labor at pre-inflation prices. Then prices adjusted. Between 1914 and 1920, wholesale prices in Britain increased 176%. Wages increased approximately 140%. Workers earned more pounds, those pounds bought less. After the war, Britain attempted to return to the pre-war gold standard. The government imposed deflationary policies to restore the pound's value. Unemployment spiked. Real wages declined 20% between 1920 and 1922. Workers absorbed both phases, inflation during expansion, unemployment during contraction. The mechanism compressed into 11 years, not slower, not different, faster. September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. The Federal Reserve responded with quantitative easing. The Fed would go on to create reserves electronically and purchased treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities from banks. Digital printing. Federal Reserve balance sheet in August 2008 was $870 billion. We learned in the last video, by December 2023, $7.7 trillion, a 785% increase in 15 years. Banks received reserves first. They didn't distribute cash to depositors. They purchased assets, stocks, bonds, real estate. Between March 2009 and December 2023, the S&P 500 went up 716%. The Nasdaq went up 1,240%. Median home price up 180%. Median household income, adjusted for inflation, up only 3%. Who owned assets in 2008? The top 10% of US households owned 85% of stocks. The top 1% owned 50%. Asset prices increased 716%. Wages increased 3% after inflation. Exact same mechanism, same transfer, same sequence. The top 1% wealth share grew from 33% to 36%. The top 10% total wealth controlled increased from $45 trillion to $93 trillion. Meanwhile, workers received stimulus checks, $1,200, $600, $1,400, totaling $3,200 per person across 3 rounds. The Fed created $6.8 trillion. You are the last receiver. Your wages adjust after prices. Your savings dilute while you hold them. The mechanism doesn't require conspiracy. It requires sequence, and sequence is inevitable. Money is a claim on resources. When new money enters the system, the total claims increase. But the total resources, factories, labor, food, housing, don't increase instantly. More claims, same resources. First receivers spend new money before prices adjust, capture full purchasing power. Middle receivers spend after some price increases, capture partial purchasing power. Last receivers receive new money after prices fully adjust, capture diluted purchasing power, and you wonder why you can't get ahead. Theft disguised in sequence? You can't eliminate the sequence. New money must enter somewhere. It can't appear simultaneously in every wallet. Someone receives it first, someone receives it last. That's not corruption, that's physics. The transfer is mechanical, and mechanical processes don't require intent. Richard Cantillon documented the mechanism in 1730. His manuscript described how new money benefits first receivers and harms last receivers. Published posthumously, the mechanism survived. Since Cantillon, every government has understood the mechanism. None have stopped it. Why? Because first receivers benefit. They lobby for expansion. They frame expansion as stimulus, growth, and emergency intervention. Workers oppose inflation, but workers receive last. By the time they feel the damage, the expansion has already occurred. Those closest to money creation benefit most. Those farthest from money creation suffer the most. Also, those closest to money creation control policy. So why would it change? That's not a flaw, that's the system. Governments claim to manage inflation through central banking. Target rates, open market operations, forward guidance. But central banks don't control the sequence. They create money and inject it through banks. Banks receive first, always. The Federal Reserve cannot deposit new money directly into workers' accounts. Currently, it's structurally impossible. More to come on this in a later video. The Fed operates through primary dealers, 24 financial institutions authorized to trade directly with the Fed. Those 24 institutions are the first receivers. Every time. During quantitative easing, the Fed purchased $4.5 trillion in assets from banks. Banks received $4.5 trillion in reserves. They didn't lend reserves to workers, they bought more assets. Workers received nothing until prices increased. Then they received inflation. The sequence is structural and the structures don't change through voting. Spain took 150 years, France took 4 years, Britain took 11 years, the United States 17 years and counting. Same mechanism, same transfer, same sequence. You are living through the fourth modern iteration. The acceleration hasn't stopped. It's exponential. The mechanism doesn't require evil, it requires proximity, and proximity is determined by institutional